council actions.
Test. All right, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. So the council meeting was on May 2nd. There were 3 items. One was a variance for a 6-foot fence. These folks had a very odd-shaped yard and had a fence that kind of came out at an angle to the front yard, or what we define as the front yard. And it was approved. They worked with them to kind of move the gate back to make more of a visibility, safety thing, and everybody was good with it, so that got approved. Then there was a reconsideration of the Middlebury North project. It was 244 single-family lots, 36 duplex lots, 38 fourplex lots, and 69 common lots that they changed. They converted some of the duplexes into townhouses to make it more ownership rather than rental. And City Council approved that one as well. And then the last one was the text amendments for our Title 10 Planning and Zoning Codes, passed unanimously, so. Pretty simple evening.
Yay.
Yeah, it's good.
That's it. Was there any staff communications at this time, or we'll do it at the end? Okay. Okay, we have the consent agenda. Does everybody agree with the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, I would make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right. 2 minutes. Huh? Well, I don't know. You just have to behave.
You know I can't do that.
There's true.
Got your flank.
Yep. Let him come on. I'm protected now.
We already did the consent agenda because we had a quorum, so we just did that.
Oh, good. Maybe we missed you then.
It still would have carried, so. One minute. Gosh, when you have 2 minutes and waiting, it seems like forever. Okay, 7 o'clock. Public hearing number 1. Do we have the applicant? Come on down.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I am Jeffrey Wardle, counsel for the Gardner Company. My address is 251 East Front, Suite 310 in Boise. I don't know if I like these new chairs. I am so used to the old movie theater chairs that. But we were here before you on this application several months ago, and it was conjoined with a development agreement modification as well as an additional conditional use permit. And it's set forth in the staff report. This is somewhat of a unique situation because the city council had denied this conditional use permit, then agreed to reconsider it, and then remanded it to you. And we do not want to waste your time. We're respectful of the process. You had heard it. You had recommended its approval previously. So what we want to do is very briefly, and then we'll answer any questions, address what we think the key issues are. So the basis for our request was the city council made this determination that with respect to a conditional use permit for the townhouse-style multifamily residences on the 7 acres on the east, that the proposed project will not enhance the successful operation of the surrounding area and the basic community function and provide an essential service to the community. We disagreed with that because the concern that was articulated by the members of the city council who had voted against it related not to the style or design, but to the issue of ownership. And we were asked at the time, you know, if we would consider a modification. And there was some discussion at the hearing about, well, maybe if you made a portion of them for sale, maybe if you evaluated that, that would be good. But staff pointed out that because this is BC zoned, it does not permit for sale product. And the city council had denied a modification in 2015 of the development agreement and a rezone to a zone which was, I don't really understand why they sought out that zone, because I believe they could have built that product there at the time with what they had, but it was a zone which would have permitted for sale product. And that was rejected. And going back in time, well over a year, as we started working with staff, they reminded us of that fact. They told us to read that transcript, evaluate what the city council had found objectionable about that application and design around it. And that's why we came forward with the townhouses. So it is important to note that at the hearing, and we provided the transcripts, Councilmember Bruner made the motion to deny, which was voted 4-2. And then on our request for reconsideration, Councilmember Bruner, who'd made the motion in large part because of this issue of ownership, then voted to hear the matter for reconsideration. So it's now before you, and as you recall, all we are here to talk about with this specific conditional use permit is the 7 acres on the east that the development agreement was modified. And the development agreement was modified to address and include all the revisions that we had presented to you previously. So when we look at a conditional use permit, the issue is one of location, size, design, and operating characteristics will not adversely affect the neighborhood, attractive, convenient, functional working environment, and whether it provides an essential service and enhance successful operations. Now, at the time, Councilmember Haverfield pointed out the fact that the concern over ownership was really a distinction without any relevance because everyone was in agreement with the style and the design and the modifications that had been made, and that functionally we couldn't do that anyway within the zone. And that we weren't seeking a rezone, we were seeking a conditional use permit consistent with the current zoning. The rezone was denied in 2015, and staff pointed out to the city council that fact and the fact that, you know, the direction we were given was to work within the confines of the existing zoning and the existing development agreement because BC contemplates a very specific type of community mixed use under your comprehensive plan, and that's what we're attempting to address here. So, we believe that the requested modification to make some or all of them for sale there's no legal basis for it. We don't find any basis in your code to make that distinction. We also don't find any basis to require an applicant who has the current and correct zoning requesting a conditional use permit to go rezone property when that rezone has previously been denied. We learn from, you know, those past things and take our action in accordance with it. The CUP standards have no ownership requirement. The CUP should be evaluated on its merits, which we believe it was. We believe you had a lengthy discussion about why townhouse-style multifamily was an appropriate residential transition between the more intensive commercial uses and the existing larger lot single-family residences in the county. We do not believe that a requested rezone is reasonable in light of the past denial of that rezone and in light of the fact that this property has been developed for a very specific purpose with a development agreement that contemplates consistency with the comprehensive plan. And to go about building 2 types of product just because the way the city codes work and the way the building codes work, a multifamily for rent townhouse may look exactly the same as a single townhouse, but they have different building codes, and it's just not possible to mix those 2 products on the same parcels and do what was asked. So, Councilmember Bruner had articulated that his concern was ownership. We certainly are sensitive to the goals in the city, and we're certainly sensitive to the desire for home ownership, and we recognize that you regularly approve a significant amount of single-family residential for sale in a variety of places. We still believe that townhome-style multifamily is the appropriate use because it will not adversely affect the neighborhood where we're only talking about ownership. You will not be able to tell the difference. Additionally, this is a residential buffer, and that's why we think it's appropriate. It could be commercial, but we've come down with a less intensive use. As to attractive, convenient, functional working environment, again, the issue of design and the modifications we made to the design and the recommendation approval that you had made as to setback and some of those things, those were all acceptable to council. It was the issue of ownership, and we don't think that ownership addresses at all whether a use is attractive, convenient, functional working environment. And then finally, provides essential services. And the testimony provided by House of Design, in part here at your hearing and also at City Council, was they see a benefit to not only the more traditional apartments that we will come forward with in the future, but also these townhouses, because it's important for their workforce. It's important for them to be able to recruit and be able to have people in proximity to their tech center. So they were incredibly supportive of it, and in fact, asked us if they could go take the city council to show them some of the other multifamily that we've done. And we said, no, let's let the process work because we trust that everybody can get there. So we do not think that the ownership issue is relevant to any of the conditional use permit approval criteria. It doesn't relate, as Councilmember Haverfield pointed out, it doesn't relate to the design because from the outside it's exactly the same. It doesn't detract from the working environment because, again, the design would be exactly the same with the only differences interior building code and sewer issues that aren't visible to people and don't have that impact. And then the House of Design testimony was consistent with what we believe that this is an appropriate and essential use. So we can talk about it more if you want. You know, we had proposed the townhouses. We had rotated them on the site so that they minimized the impact on adjoining neighbors. We worked with you on the conditions. So the only condition, only issue is I was reviewing the staff report. I think the staff's recommended condition deviates from what you had previously approved and what was approved in the development agreement modification, which contemplated if it's a residential use, that it's a 30-foot setback as opposed to the 40-foot setback. So we're more than willing to have whatever discussion you want us to have tonight. I know it's almost like, why is this coming back to you? But we would request that you grant the request for reconsideration and approve CUP, drawing a blank as to what our number is on this one, CUP 25221. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Anybody have any questions this time?
Thank you.
Can I ask a question, Madam Chair?
Yeah, you can.
So you're not changing anything from the rentals, they're all gonna be rentals?
Correct.
Still. You have any, it was asked previously what the rates are for these rentals, you have any idea what that's gonna be yet?
It's ultimately going to be dependent upon what the construction cost is. So,
And then, I'm sure there'll be some discussion about traffic. And I don't remember if this was brought up at the last hearing or not, but just simply, how do you picture people in these townhouse-style buildings getting to the freeway? Are they gonna have to use STAM?
Christy, if you could go back to my slide deck, we can. So the first thing is, as you recall in our prior discussion, as we developed this initial plan and this request for modification, that as for traffic, since we're demolishing 100,000 square feet of existing space and repurposing retail space as research space, there will be no net increase on traffic.
For what could be built there?
For what's approved.
Right.
Okay, so for what's approved, there will be no net impact on traffic. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, let's not lose sight of the $4 to $5 million worth of improvements that were funded by this project originally on STAM. we recognize that for future applications, the condition is we're gonna have to come back with another traffic study, and we will do that as these other elements go through. But with these townhouses, you're going to be able to get out either on Stam, on Happy Valley, you're gonna be able to use all of the internal circulation that currently exists. And if in fact there are traffic concerns, then we're retaining all of the interior roads that get you out to the signal to be able to get to the freeway. So we don't anticipate any net impact on what was previously set forth in the traffic studies that the project was approved with. Okay.
You mentioned something that I'm not familiar with, don't recall, just like your memory mine is not that good either. You said you're gonna demolish so many square feet a minute ago.
Yes.
What is you demolishing again?
So,
It's the north portion of the.
Chairman, Commissioners, we'll go back, and I apologize, I didn't put all the slides in here from what we did previously. But if you see that Christie is marking it with the cursor,
Yeah.
that is that commercial space right there is going to be removed and replaced with common green space for the entire project.
Okay, all right.
So we'll have approximately 2.5 acre park.
Let me get back to where I was, if you don't mind.
Sure.
One of the letters we got was from somebody was saying that you're gonna abolish, tear down the movie theater. And I thought maybe that was what you were talking about, but now you clarified. you're
Yes.
not, So I'm good.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, Christie.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Christy Watkins, Principal Planner for the City of Nampa. I'm gonna try not to repeat all of the things that he covered. I'll just try to cover some of the things that you guys need to be aware of. So if you look at the conditional use, oh my, what was that? If you look at the conditional use permit criteria that he went over, I can kind of walk you through what staff found in regards to that criteria. So the first one, this property's been vacant for 17 years. It could be considered that a multifamily development creates a logical buffer between single-family residential uses and commercial uses. The BC zone does not designate a density maximum or minimum, which allows the developer some flexibility with the design of their product. Required open space and design review of the structures can add to the neighborhood character, depending on what they ultimately look like, but they will have to go through the design review process. City services are available to the property, and traffic impact studies show that residential uses actually create less traffic than commercial uses do. And that's the study that he was referencing with that table. The second one, this project will create a buffer between the larger lot subdivision to the east and the commercial uses, while providing convenient access to the services for those residences. The structures will be required, again, to go through design review and meet city code standards. And then the third criteria, this property is located in a community mixed-use future land use designation, and it meets the fundamental principles of the mixed-use development by providing a variety of housing opportunities near shopping, jobs, and transportation services. So based on that analysis, staff can reasonably recommend to the commission that the project be approved. So as far as the transportation goes, he did talk about how as they proceed through the different phases of this project, which were outlined on his slide, that they will be required to update their traffic study as they go along. And should changes need to be made accordingly, then they will do that. So the public input received is the same as before. We received a couple more, but we included all of them from the previous public hearing. The concerns, of course, were traffic, congestion, high-rise apartments, low-income housing, that it's not compatible with the neighboring properties, that there would be light and noise pollution, that there would be a dropping in home values, and that the building easements were not large enough. So on this one, then, I wanted to make a note. He did mention that condition number 3, and in the staff report, it is incorrect. So in the development agreement, it was actually what is underlined in blue that was approved by city council, and it is that the minimum setback would be 30 feet. It was changed from the 40 that was original. So I've scratched that. So when you make your motion, if you choose to approve, then it will be you'll need to note that it's as presented tonight.
in this presentation, not as listed in the staff report. So you're aware of the project itself, 77 townhome-style units. Structures that contain 3 units and 8 units. They're adjacent, directly adjacent to 6 existing Canyon County residential properties in the Autumn Wind subdivision. They will only be 2 stories tall. So these are the conditions of approval with that change to item number 3, so that it's consistent with the development agreement. And this is your potential motion. I will stand for any questions.
Christie, I have a few. First, this isn't pertaining exactly to this, but it's in the application and it's part of the process for tonight. The fire department is listing that it's going to have 564 residences. The police department says 226. Why don't they agree?
I think one of them is looking at the entire project and what their future projection was for when they're at complete build-out, because they're gonna come back
For more?
in phases for more.
Okay,
And so I think they were looking at the full build-out, and one of them was just looking at
tonight's.
tonight's proposal.
Okay, that makes sense then. All right, second thing, we received, these are numerous letters, and this one gentleman brings up a number of points that I'd like to just get clarified to make sure that there is no sleight of hand or anything going on underneath the table, so to speak. Do you want me to name the person who wrote the letter, or does it not matter?
Doesn't matter to me,
I don't
that's up
care.
to you.
If he wants the accolade, that's fine, but. The letter stated that the applicant will be able to, under this new application, or the change in the application, will be able to come back and build things that they want because of what we're going to say tonight that didn't necessarily being approved tonight. What they're going to do is more or less tear down the movie theater, and then they were going to build houses there. They were going to tear down JCPenney and build houses there. Would any of that be possible with this application we're working on tonight?
Commissioner Kehoe, this is for that 7 acres to the very east.
Right. I
That's all that's been advertised for. That's all that we're talking about this evening. And so they'd have to come back again for another conditional use permit to be able to move into those other phases.
So then the letter is actually wrong because this is not going to give them carte blanche to open it up and do whatever they want.
No, it does not.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure I wasn't misreading something.
Any other questions for
Yep,
Christie?
yep. I wouldn't-
You're- Okay.
Sorry. And the development agreement went away, right?
Well, there's a new one.
There is a new one? Okay. That's what I was concerned about, was make sure there was one, and you're saying there is one.
Yes, there is one.
It's basically pretty much the same as what it was before, except for the minor changes that you mentioned.
Yeah, and it contains that plan that you saw that has the phasing in
Right,
it. And
okay.
that outlines all of their projected.
Okay. I just want to make sure those
Intentions.
things were clarified in my mind, and that's the way it was going to be, so it wouldn't be 6 months from now, someone coming back and saying, oh, what's that new motel doing there, or something. All right. Good, thanks.
Anybody else have a question for Christie? Okay, let's move to public hearing. I have Jeff on here and David. Wow. Just in case, okay. Is there anybody else that would like to speak for the proposal? Come on down. Give us your name and address for the record and.
I'm TJ Winger with Babcock Design Group, 800 West Main, Boise, Idaho, architect for the project. Just wanted to briefly discuss the 30 feet versus the 40 feet in case there was a question there. As we laid out the site in multiple ways, in meeting with the adjacent neighbors, with the 30 feet as currently stated and approved, it's really nice because we're able to turn the side of the townhomes to those adjacent neighbors, so we don't have any units facing those neighbors. At the 40-foot distance, we have to turn the units so they're facing the neighbors. So we were really excited about the 30 feet so that we could respect that and not have front yards and backyards and windows and whatnot. So just wanted to share that with you in case there was question about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I have one person on here against, Ronald Denton.
I didn't get permission to say your name, so I didn't
That's
want
all
to do
right,
so.
I wouldn't mind, because I feel it's still,
Give us your name and address for the
I'm
record,
sorry, I
please.
apologize.
Already did.
Ronald Denton at 1225 North Autumn Drive. I stand to have people looking in my backyard and my back windows and everything with this whole project. The thing that bothers me the most is that the fact that they purchased this property as a business development. They knew it was a business development. They knew it had a development agreement of no residential in place. And I know they knew this because the company represented them has represented all three ownerships. The first owner either ran out of money or got fed up with the cost factors involved of the demolition. So they never developed the other three structures that I heard was gonna be on that back piece of property to have up to 30 businesses there. The second one that came in and purchased it, out of state, well, the first one was out of state too. Second one, out of state, and they purchased it during the COVID. They couldn't do anything with it, so they started selling out pieces. Well, my understanding, they come back to try to sell that one piece of property, so they tried to get it rezoned. Rezoning was denied, the sale fell through. All right, now you have this company here coming in with their money and wanting to not rezone, because the rezoning failed, but they want to try to undermine the BC zoning, in my opinion, by using conditional use. Conditional use to me would be like having a taco truck outside the theater for, 30 minutes a day, nothing permanent. Why is a conditional use even being considered? The fact that I put in my letter about the tear down of the theater and JCPenney's, I spoke with JCPenney's representatives. They wouldn't tell me if they're leasing or owning or whatever, but that they were very glad to be there. The theater does not own the property. They do not rent the property, they do not lease the property. No matter what they call it, it is a managing agreement. The theater is being managed for them, the Regal manages for them. All they've got to do, if they're granted this proposal to build these townhomes, that's gonna give them their foot in the door to now, instead of the entire property having non-residential, now they can come in and throw in anything that they want to try to come back with you, as long as they can meet your needs of what fits. Apartments, duplexes, whatever. It's, the theater's demise will be if, in my opinion, if this is approved. And if you look at their development agreement, on their little drawing of all the boards, they're taking out a third in one of the boxes, a third of the parking for the theater. The theater has over 2,000 seats. It requires 2,000 parking spaces. And that's considered with a ratio of 1,000 per movie, okay? You have a movie being shown, and then you have patrons coming in for the next movie. So you have to have at least 1,000 parking spaces. They're already taking a third of the parking spaces with one of those little boxes that they're gonna come back with residential for the fact that they were going to build apartments. If you allow them to put any residential on this property other than businesses, which is what it was meant for, they're undermining you with regards to what the code was, in my opinion. The residential part, this is just a footstep on what they're going to do. They're going to tear down the theater eventually because they won't renew the agreement with the theater, or they'll, put it out there where the theater couldn't afford to operate. Theater, the JCPenney's, they'll probably redo that. They'll tear it down eventually. And the thing that gets me is that if you look at their development plan with all the little color boxes, every part of that up there on the top is marked residential. They're going to tear all that stuff down eventually, but they can move they can move their current tenants. And soon the Titan space that they're going to move probably over near the theater, they'll have to move them again, probably over near the tire store, so they can watch their tires be changed while they're eating their spaghetti. Thank you very much.
Okay, is there anybody else that's present that would like to testify for, against, or undecided? Come on up, give us your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Jeremiah Long. Appreciate you guys letting us have some input. Address is 104 Arabian Way in Nampa. in the presentation, they talk about that there's a net increase of 0 to traffic in the area with the approved, whatever, 77 to 84 units. The measurement that they're taking is from an international calculation, which gives them like a 0.7 or a 0.9 trips per day in peak time. According to data from the dataus.io in 2019, nearly 85% of the population in Idaho owned 2 cars or more. 39% of the population owned 2 cars, with 25% owning 3, 12% owning 4, and 8.6% owning 5 cars or more. And according to the Idaho Department of Transportation study from 2019, released in January of 2020, there were 3.25 trips made per day per car in the state of Idaho. So with the city using the international formula, it then takes the total number of trips per day and narrows it down for apartment usage. Now, I don't know if you guys have driven in that area recently with the number of vehicles in the apartment complexes, but I can tell you right now that the apartment tenants own at least 2, if not 4 cars in the existing apartments. This morning I had the luxury of sitting in traffic from Stam. It was backed up from Stam up by the JCPenney all the way back to airport at 7:30 this morning, partially due to the fog, but more importantly due to the increased traffic, not just from the apartments that are there now, but from the continued building south. The 6 to 7 mile corridor from, Greenhurst all the way to Cherry, there is a planned improvement of over 1,000 units. 1,000 units. So if you take the formula that the state released, or the number of trips per day, of 3.25 trips per day in that corridor cannot handle any more additional improvements, even with the improvements that you guys have already approved. The traffic is out of control, and these 84 or 77 units is going to add more, even though it's nil or a net increase of 0. How much sense does it make that you're going to pack all these people in there and you can't even get them out? Before this is approved, please enforce a traffic study for the entire project, not just for this lower circuit breaker where they don't have to meet it, and that's what all these developers are doing. Not meeting the threshold so they can bypass the traffic study. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Okay. Do you want to come back up and?
Commissioners, I will be brief. Again, Jeff Wardle, counsel for the Gardner Company, 251 East Front in Boise. I want to start by addressing Mr. Denton's claim that somehow residential was prohibited. In the original development agreement, it was not. It was prohibited with a conditional use permit. It was permitted as part of a planned unit development. And we met with staff and had the discussion with them early on as to this parcel in particular. How do you want us to proceed with this? Do we want to process it as a planned unit development, or do you want us to modify the development agreement? Because we were going to have to modify the development agreement to address House of Design's needs, and that's why.
Hold on one second, I'm getting hands.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
all right, well, we'll come back in a minute.
Good warm-up.
What was that again? Kendra Hooper, are you there?
I am here, yes.
Okay, give us your name and address for the record. You got 3 minutes.
All right, it's Kendra Hooper, 6120 Airport Road in Nampa. Thank you so much for the time. Sorry I wasn't able to be there. I woke up with a fever, so I thought I would spare you guys all that lovely journey.
Thank you.
I'm not coming down.
I was present there with Jeremiah Long at the city council when they were there, and one of the subjects that I brought up was we have already hundreds of apartments around Happy Valley and going down Garrity. We have hundreds more being built over by the Idaho Center. So we don't need apartments and temporary housing because this is a community that where people have lived 20, 30 plus years. People have come to retire here, not in the city. They want land, they want gardens, they want to be able to raise families like that. And all of this apartment and temporary housing with townhomes are bringing people who are not invested in the community. And we are losing our community. I was over at LaDon's jewelry store and we were talking, and she said the issue with apartments, and I agree, the first person who lives there, it's a nice apartment. The second person who lives there, it's a nice apartment. The third person, it starts to slip. The fourth person is when it starts to get slummy. And so if you think about it, in 4 people down the road, all of these apartments are not going to be as nice and high end as they may seem right now. And it's going to take our community, our lovely, fantastic community, and really trash it. And I agree with Mr. Long when he was talking about the traffic. We need to, as a whole, look at our traffic and our road infrastructure before we start just approving all these housings. My issue with people not having ownership in the community is one of the reasons that they wanted them to do some options for people to purchase. Maybe lessen the number and don't have rentals. I know that the House of Design claimed that they needed this for bringing in their business professionals and engineers as a perk, but the way that they had described it previously, it was going to be just a regular average run of the mill, nothing fancy that anybody would want to come and stay in. It was going to be a temporary place for engineers and their families until they could find something better. And that is not what this community is. It would tear down the whole crux of why people have moved out into this area of Nampa. And the Garner Group had said that it will not adversely affect the neighborhood, and that is completely inaccurate. Every single thing about bringing in more of these cheap style housing that is not going to make people have that ownership in their community is going to ruin our neighborhoods.
I'm sorry, but your time is up now.
Okay, sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And we have another person online? That was just one. Okay. All right, take 2.
Commissioners, Jeff Wardle again. Just to wrap things up, it is incorrect to say that that residential, specifically multifamily, was not permitted. It would have been permitted via planned unit development, and there was the discussions with staff about whether or not that was appropriate. We took this path at the recommendation that we received. Second, as community mixed use, under the land use plan, under your land use map, it contemplates a true mixed use development. And that's what this is. With respect to the issue of traffic, we recognize that there are limits out there. We recognize that our predecessors in interest made significant investments, but as we go down the road, everyone is going to have to be part of that. And we're amenable to that. But that's why we brought our traffic consultant, Kittleson, one of the best traffic engineering companies in the state, who provided the analysis and provided the testimony. And I understand Mr. Long's concern, but the fact of the matter is, the metric we use is based upon what is in the ITE manual. It is what guides us. It is what your staff has commented on. It is what the traffic engineers have done. And it is true, we can talk all we want about the number of cars that renters may or may not own, but the fact of the matter is the trip generation data is what it is. And when you provide for mixed use, and I believe it was as Commissioner Kirkham said at the last hearing, when you provide mixed use next to a freeway interchange with multifamily and more intensive use, that's where you want it. Because these vehicles are not going to be traveling out to Arabian and out to Airport, as you've heard testimony tonight. So we request that you grant the request for reconsideration and approve conditional use permit. So thank you very much.
Anybody have any questions?
Thanks.
Yeah, maybe I'll ask you a question, Shortle. Just because it got brought up, I want you to be able to speak on the plans for the theater.
Commissioners, while I appreciate Mr. Denton's concern for the theater, it's purely speculative. It is an agreement that was entered into 10-plus years ago by a predecessor that owned and developed and decided to do that. We are not in front of you tonight to tear down the theater. We are not down in front of you with an application that's going to impact the theater's parking. But I do guarantee you that we do live in an era where we all have Disney Plus and Amazon Prime and Netflix and access on demand to sit at home on our 80-inch Samsung televisions that's changing the nature of entertainment. We recognize the benefit to entertainment use at this site because it is counter-cyclical with respect to traffic. It provides those things. But I can't stand here and guarantee you that in perpetuity, Mr. Denton is going to be able, as he testified, to drag his grandkids there in a wagon to see a movie. Things change and we have to have flexibility. So that's not before you tonight. We're not hiding any peas. I do take a little umbrage as well with the characterization that, that it's outsiders. We've had this conversation. We've presented it. I'm a little frustrated about that fact because yes, my law firm has represented every owner of this property. And you know what? In the course of 17 years, the lifestyle of projects change and the economics change. And who would have thought 17 years ago that you could sit on your couch and watch a first-run movie for $3? And who would have thought 17 years ago that Amazon would have a distribution facility here that would put Macy's and everybody else out of business because we all discovered the benefit of online shopping. So there will be other applications, and there will be other applications that require conditional use permits, and those will be before you in the future. But that's not what's here tonight. It's only these 77 units.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion to close public hearing. Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm assuming Michelle is still here. I didn't hear her.
Aye.
There she is, yay. Okay, public hearing is closed.
Christie, do you have any data or any idea what the vacancy rate is for multifamily in this city? Like,
Oh.
in general, do you know, Tom?
Commissioner Garner, I
Zero.
don't have the information right off the top of my head.
I was actually going to look it up.
I
today,
know
and
that it's low
slow.
right now. The demand is pretty high, but I can't tell you exact numbers.
I think in the city council hearing, they say it was like between 1% and 2%.
Yeah, it's low.
I'll just make a couple comments. I mean, it's kind of weird that we're back here again, but I still feel the same as I did in the prior hearing. It's a good transition from the single family to the commercial. It's a nice looking product. I really disagree with the testimony that it's temporary housing. I mean, people live in apartments their whole lives, so, and I would assume, based on Gardner's reputation, that they're gonna have somebody manage it appropriately to provide needed housing in the community. Especially with the economic times we're leading into. That's a little different from the last time we were here, although it's only been a couple of months. The pressure on interest rates is gonna drive people, well, Tom and I were talking about it before the hearing, the fact that deals are falling apart in single family because rates are rising, and that's just gonna drive people into rentals and for a time period where they can get on their feet and buy a house if that's their ultimate goal. They could move in and like where they live and stay there. So this is gonna be a great community. I'm 100% for it, and that's just my comments. If anybody else has anything.
I agree too. I was for this. I thought it was a great proposal when you brought it to us before. I think that dirt just sitting there is not making the city any money. It hasn't made any money in 15, 16 years. It's still dirt. We don't get a lot of taxes on dirt. I think the idea of House of Design and these townhomes going in there, I think is a great great fit. The traffic to me is, where's a better place to put it? If you're gonna look at a bunch of traffic hitting the road, they're not gonna mostly likely be going down Happy Valley. They're gonna go down Garrity, or they're gonna get on the freeway, and you can't get them any closer unless you put them in the medium of 84. So I think as far as traffic-wise, I think it's a great spot because they can go around that outside loop and hit the freeway, and they don't even get out in the traffic with the rest of us. And I was on Happy Valley at 7:30 this morning myself, and luckily I was able to go down Airport and up and over the freeway, but all the lights were messed up due to the fog, and that was, yeah. So I drive that at least twice a day, so I know exactly what you're talking about. We don't have any control over Happy Valley and doing anything with it, unfortunately. So, but I think their design, I think what you guys want to do there is great. To me, putting something in like this is going to bring more business to the movie theater and the restaurants and stuff that are there, because people are going to be living there. They can walk across the parking lot instead of sitting at home. I haven't been to the movie theater in 5, 6 years. I used to go all the time, but now that I can sit at home and I can pause it when I need to, why go spend the money to go sit in the movie theater? So I think this will help add people to those restaurants and the businesses that are there. That there's places in that thing that have never had anybody in them. So why continue to sit there and leave an empty shell sitting there when we can repurpose it? Things have changed in the last 10, 15 years. So let's look at a different approach. Let's do something new with it, and let's try to make some use out of this thing instead of just sitting there looking at dirt and rocks. So
I would say that I agree with what's been said already, and I think as far as the multifamily, the success of commercial businesses or retail depends upon housetops, right, or residences. We need more residents in order to have business be successful. And so putting it there makes so much sense. Put it right there. Not only is it a buffer, but it will help with the traffic because they have to drive short distances, but even you look at the services that are available right there by them. You have healthcare right there at St. Alphonsus. You have a grocery store right there with Winco. You have the movie theater. You have multiple choices for eating out, all there within walking distance. So if there's anything that's going to minimize traffic, it would be putting the people where the services are at. And so I could wholeheartedly agree with this project, and I would vote to approve.
Not trying to beat a dead horse, but I agree also, but for a different reason. When I first got married, I lived in a place just exactly like this, except it was a Kmart. You remember those places? They're gone.
You lived in Kmart?
Huh?
You lived in a Kmart?
I lived right behind the Kmart, right by the massive dumpsters back there.
For those of you that are younger, those were big stores like a Walmart is now, but
right.
they were Kmart, so.
Oh, the blue light specials, right? Yeah.
So, I mean, I can relate to this. I mean, I lived there myself, and I own a nice house now. So, well, I think it's nice. So it's just a transition. So it happens, and that's what young people need is a place like this to get started. And to be able to walk to work, or even if they work at CWI, go to school at CWI, it's a short hop and a skip. You can ride a bike. So I'm in agreement too. I was before and I am now.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll
With everybody.
agree with everything that's said. I'm glad they kept it as rentals. I was concerned when city council wanted to make them owner. I think we need a mix of housing, and we can't have everything be ownership, especially like Ron was saying, and we need rentals right now, and I hate seeing more housing eat up farmland. Let's have it eat up a strip of asphalt or
Yeah.
dirt that's not there. So, Madam Chair, I move to recommend approval of the conditional use permit to allow multiple family residential apartments in townhouse style.
Not a recommendation.
Yeah, we're just deciding.
It's
It's an approval.
What
It's
did I do?
an actual approval.
You read it
If,
exactly.
if you wouldn't mind, sorry, Drew, can
Oh,
you
I'm
read
sorry.
it off of the?
You said that earlier too.
Thank
didn't
you.
I move to approve the conditional use permit to allow multiple family residential apartments in a townhome style in a BC Community Business Zoning District at 0 Stam Lane for Clark Wardle LLP, representing multiple owners with all conditions listed in this presentation.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so this CUP, if anybody, we can't It's not going back to city council, but if there's any issues you want to take up with, there's business cards for planning and zoning staff in the back. Call them tomorrow, and they will answer any questions about this. Thank you.
You have to read your thing. You have to read your little thing.
No, no.
Oh, no,
that's-
this is done.
no.
That's a reconsideration.
It's reconsideration, so that's why she gave me notes.
Okay. We just didn't want you to miss it.
No.
We didn't get that note.
See, just contact staff. Okay, so number 2. Yeah, we need to open and,
Thank you for your input.
we need to open and
Continue?
continue till June 28th. Oh, I couldn't get that word. So we're going to open public hearing for the zoning map amendment from RA to RD for Sierra Meadows subdivision. Need a motion to continue.
Madam Chair, I'll move to continue this item number 2 to what date?
June 28th.
28th.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to continue this till June 28th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that is continued. All right, public hearing number 3. Do we have the applicant here? Come on up.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, my name is Josh Hubert. I believe you wanted my address, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
3203 Karsten Court, Nampa, 83686. Sorry, I'm kind of new and don't know what to do really here, other than to say that we live just down the road here and have owned this property for years. To one side of us is a severely underutilized, very vacant, what is it, a business center / shopping center that really needs growth. It's just been sitting there stale, and we have some other things around. On the other side of there, I've got a storage facility on the other side of the property, and so we're just surrounded by, I believe, you would call it commercial, I guess. And we just are looking to get approval or recommendation, whatever that falls into, to build a 84-unit apartment complex. They are luxury apartment homes. We did bring some imagery that you might not find here that I could pass around to you guys to kind of give you things. We did, with Dean, that we're duplicating the orchard lofts. I don't know if you've seen the orchard lofts on Orchard there, but.
Sit here.
Hey, beautiful, thank you. So this is the intention on what we're trying to bring to the community, where we're severely lacking, again, rentals in the community. We have a lot of neat schools there, which my children attended throughout the years, and we found that, again, it's lacking the ability for a large group of folks to live in the area.
So how many bedrooms are you looking at?
There are 1 bedroom, 1 bath, 2 bedroom, 1 bath, and 2 bedroom, 2 baths. We did include lots of picnic area, green space. We've also included dog park, as well as a couple playgrounds, at least 1 playground, possibly looking at something that's kind of like a sub-playground as well, just to provide enough space and entertainment there on the grounds for the residents to enjoy.
Okay. Well, we'll hear from staff and then go to public hearing, and then we might call you back up for questions when we get to that point.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. The action requested tonight is the recommendation for annexation and zoning to BC and a conditional use permit for multifamily. The surrounding zoning, the applicant covered that. There's a commercial strip to the north. There's a multifamily project on the east side of that commercial strip that was recently approved, and they're in the building permit phase right now. To the south is storage, east is Royal Meadows, and to the west is Shamrock Villa subdivision. Here's a site plan, concept site plan. If you wish to approve the project, then a development agreement can be added with this concept plan holding it in place. As the applicant stated, this is Orchard Lofts, and it would look similar to this. And it would have to go through design review as well. As far as annexation, staff finds the property is enclaved. Staff finds that the proposed BC zoning district would be compatible with the adjacent commercial designation and can be stretched. One parcel deep to cover this. The conclusion of law that you can kind of hang your hat on as far as approval or denial would be if it's reasonably necessary to assure the orderly development of the city in order to allow efficient and economically viable provision of tax-supported and fee-supported municipal services. So essentially saying whether this is the right time to annex this in or not. It provides you the significant liberty to determine that. As far as the zoning, staff finds that the BC zoning district would be compatible with the adjacent commercial designation. The multifamily residential use would be similar to the adjacent parcel and would be compatible with the adjacent commercial uses. This body would need to determine whether the compatibility is there for the with the nearby single-family residential uses. Staff finds that the BC zoning district matches the parcel to the north. It's a typo there. The BC zoning district would not create a spot zone. And as it states in the comprehensive plan, there's it's in the public interest to provide a variety of housing types within the city. Regarding the conditional use permit, the staff finds there's considerable buffers on the east and west sides of this project, being the Elijah Drain on the east side and then the road Southside Boulevard to the west. If traffic is generated above a certain amount, they would need to do a traffic impact study as well. The commission would need to consider whether other aspects of this project would not be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. As I stated before, design review would be required. And also stated before, it's in the public interest to provide a variety of housing types, as stated in the comprehensive plan. So those are the regulations for annexation zoning and the conclusions of law for the conditional use permit. As far as correspondence, the building department has their typical comment. Code compliance said that there has open violations for solid waste accumulation and weeds throughout the property. The Nampa Parks comments that the bike and ped master plan that calls for a 20-foot wide easement on the eastern portion of this development on the west side of the Elijah Drain for a 10-foot path. And that would be a requirement as part of the development. The Elijah Drain has a 50-foot easement on each side for the Nampa Meridian Irrigation District. The typical comments from engineering, frontage improvements, and then some right-of-way dedication as well. A couple things to note. The Greenhurst multifamily, which I mentioned early on the east corner of this project, was approved for 60 units. The conditional use permit here is for dwelling up to 3 stories, so that would be the limiting factor here. The proposed concept has 6 buildings with each 3 stories tall, totaling 84 units. And a 25-foot landscape buffer would be required along Southside Boulevard. The open space, as presented in the concept plan, is about 15%. The required amount is 5%. As far as parking, it will be calculated according to the city code, which requires 2 spaces per unit, plus ADA spaces. The applicant has proposed 170 parking spaces. And the further analysis will be done with the design review and building permit review as well. As I stated before, development agreement can be added as a condition that would hold the concept plan in place. Columbia High School would be the high school. It's 2.5 miles. East Valley Middle School is just under a mile, and Ronald Reagan Elementary is just under a mile as well. To note that most of the area between the schools and this development are without sidewalk. The conditions of approval are in the staff report, as well as any that you would wish to add. There's a combined motion there, or we can break the motions into 2, whichever you prefer, and I will stand for any questions.
Any questions for Parker?
Parker, I have sort of a curiosity question. You mentioned it a couple of times when you were just speaking to us, and you were talking about the original concept, 84-unit apartments in 6 buildings. To me, an original concept is something that used to be, but now it's changed. This hasn't changed in any way, has it?
Commissioner, if it was changed, it would be a revised concept.
Why do they say original? I mean, that's...
It's just saying that this is the first,
So he's subject to change it unless we do a development agreement saying this is what we want, those units, and...
it would be a revised plan if they were to say they change it on their way to council, or if they come back with another.
I guess what I'm trying to drive at is, why do you say original? Why not just say it's for 84-unit apartment complex, and then if they change it, then say the revised is 27 units, or 885 units, or whatever?
Commissioner Kehoe, the
Yeah.
reason why we've started doing that is because sometimes based on conditions that you guys might impose on the project or things that may come up, sometimes we end up with a different, slightly different, they'll change some lots or they'll lose some units or whatever based on those conversations. Then we will put in the city council notification, we'll say the original was this, it's been revised to this. So we start with original and we work our way into the revisions so that city council knows what they're looking at. Because we've had problems in our public hearings where people have come and said, well, first you said this and now you're saying that, you're switching it up on us. And so we're trying to be very upfront and say, this is what was originally proposed and this is why it's changed.
Okay, fine.
Any other questions for Parker?
Yeah, I do. You said in there about the parking, we just went through those changes. When do those changes take effect?
So thank you, Commissioner Garner. Those are in effect as of last Monday, but this project was
In the works
submitted
prior.
as it is now, as it's being shown now, prior to when those codes went into effect. So they followed the parking codes.
Okay, so if we did do a development agreement to basically put the concept in place, what kind of latitude do they have? How much can they change that without it, becoming additional revision as opposed to the original? You know?
You have some latitude as far as what kind of conditions you can place on the conditional use permit as it goes forward, and council also has that same latitude. So if you wanted them to follow the codes that were adopted on May 2nd and you want to put that into the development agreement, that's at your discretion. This is a concept plan, so I'm not sure to what level it's been designed, if it's been designed down to the very last measurement, and this is what will fit, or if there's room for them to add more.
Yeah, I guess that was just my question is like, for instance, they've got 6 buildings or whatever it is. Maybe the building number stays the same, but maybe the layout of those buildings changes. Does that mean that original concept is now revision 1. I don't, that's my question. I just didn't know how dialed in that was.
We do have a little bit of leeway with concept plans. We have some language that says that they can increase the density of a project by 10%, because a concept is a concept. It isn't dialed down to the last detail, and so they do have a little bit of flexibility with that if they need to.
Okay.
If they go beyond that, then we have to do a development agreement modification.
Yeah, that's just curiosity about that.
Okay.
Do we have anything other than the conceptual site plan as far as plans go, elevations?
Commissioner, the only other thing would be that they're following the Orchard Lofts
Right.
elevation, so it'd look similar to that. Which could be added to the development agreement if you wish.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll go to public hearing. We have Dean Anderson on here as 4. Do you want to speak, or are you just on the record? Okay.
My name is Dean Anderson, 3875 South Twilight Rise Way, Meridian, Idaho. I'm the owner of the Orchard Lofts, and I'm going to be involved with the Huberts on this project and probably have partial ownership. So we're also building another project across town called the Franklin Lofts. It's on the corner of Karcher and Franklin. It's right across from the yeah. Anyway, we've got 48 units framed up over there. We're going to have another 48 hopefully finished next year. And we're following basically the same floor plans, the same building design, the stone, the landscape. I have a couple pictures here that you might want to look at on the inside, because we are trying to luxury apartments, and we have a crew. Right now it's me and my crew, but when a unit comes vacant, we go into that unit, we completely repaint all the baseboard, we clean the thresholds, all the light fixtures, pressure wash all the patios, and our goal is that when we have a turnover, we want them to look exactly like new or better. So it's something that we want to keep up and improve the neighborhood and have a quality product for the city of Nampa. Do you have any questions about Franklin Lofts or Orchard Lofts or?
No? We'll get this back to you.
And if you guys do hold us to what we have, we don't plan on putting more units on. And you can put that in the agreement if you want. And we feel we'll have plenty of parking. At the Orchard Lofts, we have 2 per unit. We have half 1-bedrooms and half 2-bedrooms. And we have a lot of leftover parking at the Orchard Lofts, so we're happy with that. And we should have the same here.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else here that would like to testify for, against, or undecided? Is there anybody online? Figure I better double check that now. Okay. I would entertain a motion to close public hearing.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, public hearing is closed.
I think it's a good location. I do. I think that it's, again, you've got a little bit of a commercial center starting right there. You got some restaurants and things like that that are right there. And it's not too far from services, just down Greenhurst, right, to Walmart and the hospital. And so I think it's a great location. It's very well shielded as far as neighbors are concerned, because on the east side, you've got the Elijah Drain that separates them from residential, and there's some trees, and the pathway back there will be great. And then there's the other project that's going in right there, so I think it's just a good project for the spot, and I'd be in favor of it.
Agreed.
E3.
Sounds like Matt needs to make a motion.
Okay, Madam Chair, I would move that we approve.
Recommend.
Okay, so we recommend, I see the approve there, so I saw, okay. I move that we recommend approval of the annexation and zoning to BC Commercial Business, Community Business Zoning District and conditional use permit for multifamily residential in a BC zoning district for the South Side Lofts at 2416 and 2424 Southside Boulevard for Joshua Hubert, with all conditions listed in the staff report and conclusions of law.
Second.
What about the development agreement? You don't want to do that?
What would the development agreement?
Yeah, I think so. So also to require that the owners enter into a development agreement with City of Nampa to secure the concept plan for the project.
You still second?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't want to rethink it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve or recommend approval. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that goes on to city council, so I don't have to read my thing for there either. All right, thank you. It'll go to city council and you guys will. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, please don't leave us all here alone.
Oh, yeah, grab your book.
Oh, don't forget your book.
Yeah, you saw.
Okay. Okay, public hearing number 4, non-commercial kennel license for 4 dogs.
My apologies, Commissioners, Madam Chair. Amber's feeling ill this evening, and so she's respectfully asked for a continuous reschedule.
Christie, how do,
Date?
so we just open it and do you have a date?
June 28th would be the next available date.
Okay. So we'll open public hearing for item number 4, and I need a motion to continue to.
Madam Chair, I would, what do we propose, or?
Continuing to June 28th.
Just
Yeah,
move-
I
move
would
to continue.
propose that we continue this
Yes.
public hearing till June 28th.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to continue this on June 28th. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it'll be on that schedule. Thank you.
Thank you for coming and telling us.
Okay. I wonder if we can find our next applicant.
We'll draw lots and see who gets it over.
Where's all your support? They just sent letters.
And the bottles of wine and.
Yeah.
Oh,
Where's the
yeah, that's right. That's what this one's about.
Yeah, I was like,
I make a motion, we adjourn to, what's the address?
so Andrew Medina, so it's, you want my home address or the business?
Either one's fine.
2016, well, sorry, 116 13th Avenue South and also 114 13th Avenue South. And I think 6-7 months ago, I was here just looking to expand next door. Pretty simple. It's just been a nice, busy flow with business, so it made sense to go over to the old Luna Blue building that was there and turn it into a lounge. So pretty easy. I'm not cutting a wall through or anything, because one's going to stay a bottle shop, one's going to be a lounge, so.
Let me just ask you a question. I'm sorry, have you
No,
finished?
I'm good.
You are now, right?
Yeah.
When you got here before, did you talk about the lounge, or did I ask you about the lounge? I mean,
Well,
what's
it's-
between a lounge and like a bar where you go sit in a bar stool?
Well, it's a wine shop. You could sit and grab a glass of wine and enjoy a glass of wine.
Do you
So
serve
they're all
snacks
combined.
or
It's all
food or anything
combined.
else, or just the wine?
We do have a small, like, just like a charcuterie board or something. Nothing crazy. Going forward, I'm not sure, but we're just gonna keep it the way we're doing it now.
That's cheese, in case you're wondering.
Yeah, cheese. You can get at Kmart. You can get at Kmart.
Some things.
So that's pretty much it. I mean, simple.
Thank you. And yet a lot of people complimenting on your business, so you must be doing a good job.
It's been great. So I'm going to build apartments on top.
Okay.
No.
It's not a problem. Cut down on the drinking and driving that way.
Yeah, that's
So now we'll
downtown.
hear from staff, and then
Okay.
we'll see who wants to have public testimony.
Daniel might
Want to go outside and drum up some business?
All right, Christie.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. As stated, the action requested from you tonight is approval or denial of the conditional use permit for expansion of an existing bar or tavern. So in our previous code, when he was here the first time, we were calling them bars, taverns, nightclubs, those kinds of things. With the code changes in October, we changed that to alcohol sales establishment. So now that covers everybody, from a store to a bar to a tavern, if their sales of alcohol are over 40% of their income. So it covers everyone.
Yep.
So the property is located in the Downtown Historic District. As he stated, the tenant space that was approved last August was 116, and he will be expanding into the adjacent tenant space at 114. So your conditional use permit criteria is, you are all very well familiar with it. Staff finds that this request is just an expansion of a previously approved use. The comprehensive plan states that we do need activities that will bring people to the downtown area. Public facilities are available. Restaurants and taverns already exist in the area and provide a variety of options. The downtown character is intended for these types of uses and community gathering opportunities. On-street parking is available throughout the downtown, and this use will not generate an abnormal amount of traffic for this area. The job opportunities and business ownership will be enhanced by any new businesses that choose to locate in downtown. This is an existing tenant space that will require building permits for any internal remodels. External remodels of the building's facade will require design review and building permits. The downtown character is intended for these types of uses and community gathering opportunities. Therefore, staff can reasonably recommend that the commission approve this project. So correspondence that was received, obviously you guys have stated, there's been several letters of support. The expansion will have a positive effect on the downtown. And the building department did give their standard Title IV requirements. So these are the conditions of approval, should you choose to approve the project. And this is your potential motion. I will stand for any questions.
I have a question for Daniel. You've been sitting here all night, you haven't done anything and answered any questions. Will you still get paid, or do you have to answer some questions before you get paid?
Oh, my gosh.
Okay, you can sit there and go back to sleep.
He brought me the sign-up sheets. He was working.
I didn't bring you one for this, nobody signed up.
Okay. So I'd entertain a motion to close public
So
hearing.
moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to close public hearing. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, public hearing is closed.
Madam Chair, I'll make the motion to approve the,
I think Michelle might want to make it a wine bar.
oh, is she there right now?
Yeah, she just, is that where she is?
Yes, that's where I'm at.
She's going to give a different type of testimonial.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'll wait for her, if she's gonna make a motion. I'll make the motion that we approve the conditional use permit for an expansion of an existing bar, nightclub, tavern, cocktail lounge in a DH zoning district at 114 13th Avenue South for Swirl Wine Shop and Lounge. For Andrew Medina, representing for Andrew Medina, with all conditions of staff and conclusions of law.
Second.
Oh, fighting over that.
It's been moved and seconded to
Run
approve,
down there and probably give you a free glass of wine.
Yeah.
approve the CUP. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, now I get to read this for the
Is
first
she
time.
opposed or delayed on the,
Delayed. She's delayed. This CUP will become effective 15 calendar days from the date of this hearing unless an appeal has been filed with the Planning and Zoning Department with the appropriate fee. No action should be taken on this CUP until the appeal period has concluded. The applicant must confirm with Planning and Zoning staff there have been no appeals. Thank you. All right, now Christie's going to come up and tell us a story. We're not done yet. We're not? No.
All right, I'll try to make this short. So just staff communications, I just wanted to bring you guys up to speed. After the last meeting that we had, just because of all of the questions that come up regarding school district stuff, I thought, you know what? I'd like to be able to tell you something. Like, I don't have answers for you, and that was frustrating to me. So on May 4th, we had the Nampa School District and the Valley View School District, 2 representatives from each. We had Commissioner Morgan and Councilman Haberfield join us in a joint meeting to discuss various different things. And what this turned into was something that's going to be ongoing. So we're going to have a monthly meeting every month now for the next 5 months to try to work through some of these issues. We talked to them a little bit about the application process and when their comments will be the most effective. So as you guys know, annexations and rezones is when you have the most flexibility to make those kinds of decisions. For them to comment on a final plat is kind of too late down the road. You know, we're just looking to make sure that it conforms with the preliminary plat. So they need to do it at that entitlement phase. So we tried to clear that up for them and say, you know, this is when you'll have the most effect. However, what their concern was, you know, can you guys really consider their comments? We're going to have Todd Lakey or Joe Borton attend one of these upcoming meetings for you guys to tell you what exactly you can consider and what you can't consider in your decision-making process. My explanation to them was they can take all of the comments and use them to make that decision on whether or not they decide it's the right time for a development of this magnitude or if it isn't. But they can't say it's because the schools are full. That doesn't fit into our conclusions of law. So you can't use that as your reason for denial, but you can take all of the comments that come in and you can use that to determine if it's the right time for a development of that size. Legal will go over that probably at the next meeting. So if you guys have any questions in that regard, write them down, bring them to the next meeting, because they're going to be here to answer your questions specifically on what you can and can't use as a reason.
At the next commission meeting?
Yes.
Over here, okay.
Yeah.
That just pertains to schools or other things as well?
It's
It's
everything.
Yeah. okay.
Yeah, I mean, you have to use everything to make one decision.
Which is kind of what Mr. Wardle was saying tonight.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And he's an attorney, so.
Yeah.
We should probably listen to him. So they did ask, because they, you know, obviously have to go look around the community to decide where to place schools. And so one of the things that they struggle with, of course, is knowing what's coming. We send the applications so that they can look, but they don't have a way of compiling all that information to look at it as a whole. So those maps that Rodney brings and gives you guys the quarterly updates, I'm going to start sending those to them as well, so that they have that information.
Awesome.
That's a
Yeah.
good idea, yeah.
With the explanation that, you know, a preliminary plat, when you're looking at the whole project, can take 1 to 7 years to develop out completely.
Right.
When you're looking at the final plat map, those are housetops that are going to probably be built within the next year. So that'll help them kind of determine, you know, if they're going to adjust their boundaries, or if they're going to build new schools, or if they're going to buy new property, that kind of thing. So one of the questions that I did ask Nampa School District, just because their comments are about 5A, moving into a 5A status, that's come up a couple different times with Columbia and whatnot. So I said, you know, hey, what's the issue here? All you say in your letter is it's going to move us into 5A status. Well, what does that mean? That's mostly about athletics. They're competing with other schools that have, for lack of a better word,
They don't want to get
better-
beat worse than they're already
better
getting beaten.
athletes. Well, there's that.
Little fish in a
But
big
that's what they
pond.
were worried about. And one of the things that they brought up was the fact that when that happens, the kids are less likely to go out for sports because they kind of don't feel like it's worth it.
Everybody wants to get beat all the time.
Yeah, and so if they move them into that 5A status, then they're really going to have more pressure on them, and they're not going to be as likely to go out for sports. That's their concern. So if you guys have any other questions that you want me to ask, like I said, Commissioner Morgan is on this work group. So if you guys have any questions that you would like us to ask them or any information you'd like us to get from them, please email me, email Commissioner Morgan, and we'll try to get those questions answered for you. Ridgeview High School, I'll just give you some numbers here. Ridgeview High School opened 6 years ago. It had 1,200 students when it opened. Capacity is 1,800. It is right now at 1,650. So it's right there. And just from the pre-app meetings that I've been having, I know there's at least 8 more subdivisions coming out there.
Nampa High was 435 in my graduating class.
Yeah,
And there was just Nampa and Nampa Christian.
yeah.
That's
Isn't-
unbelievable.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, total for all 4 classes?
Holy cow.
That's all 4 classes. Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
That's great.
But it was interesting that Nampa, they have no capacity concerns right now. They're,
Yeah, and they stated that way, so, yeah, exactly. We talked to them a little bit about sharing their resources with each other, because like, well, we've got one school that's saying that they're not at capacity, and we've got another school saying that they are. How do we do that? Well, apparently that is a huge process that to me sounds a little bit ridiculous.
to move the
But
boundary, you mean?
just to move the boundary, or even for a developer to come and say, I'm adjacent to the Nampa School District, I'm gonna alleviate some pressure at Valley View, and I'm gonna annex into the Nampa School District instead. To do that, they have to talk to the Nampa School Board, the Valley View School Board, the State School Board, and then they have to get it on a ballot to be voted on by the public.
Oh, my gosh.
So if you can imagine how that's gonna go.
Is it voted on by the whole city, or is it just
Yeah.
the I thought it was just the property owners. Oh, wow.
No, it's put on a ballot for the people in that district. So it would be just like if you were voting for someone who
Yeah.
has a district, it would be
And
the
their
people
dates
in
can be
those
different
districts.
dates than regular election dates, right?
Yeah, so the process can take over a year just to get that boundary changed.
When I started on planning and zoning, we had a gal that was on the, like 20 years. She was a school district employee, and she held her position because, and that she was here in the middle of all that.
Yeah, she worked in the food services. Yeah, Sharon?
I can't remember her name. She was here and then left right after I came.
Yeah, Sharon Kine, Shirley, Sheila Kine.
Sheila.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, you're correct. And I kind of wish Jeff was here to have this conversation, but, you know, we'll continue to update you as we have these meetings, because each meeting now is going to be about a different topic. So the next meeting that we're going to have with them is going to be with Doug Critchfield and the future land use map and all of that. We're going to start looking at site development and future planning and where would it be appropriate to do this, so that when the developer comes in, if they've got a project that they, you know, really have this big project and they want to master plan it and they want to say, okay, we'll put a school in here. We'll work with the school district and put a school in here. Then at least they have some idea of what we're thinking and what the school district is thinking about where those might go. It'll be helpful, for sure.
Christie, I don't know how the heck they did it, but when I was on Ada County Planning and Zoning, a developer wanted to build something, they would donate the land for the school.
And that's an option, but
They
that's
never do
that's
that over here.
something that they need to work out between them. It's not something we can require them to do. It has happened.
That happens all the time over
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, it has happened here. I know Corey's done it. But this last time, let's just take Ridgeview, for example. And the only reason I do that is because that's where my kids went to school, so I'm very familiar with what they went through to get there. My son, when he was in first grade, we voted on the bond for the Ridgeview High School. He never went to that high school. He graduated from Valley View before that high school has ever even broke ground. So it's like, it took a long time to get there. And the frustrating part about it was that working where I do, I got to see all the things that happened in the meantime. Well, they had a piece of property that was donated to them. They didn't like it.
So they traded it for something else, and then they bought another piece, and then they, it's like, pick something already. But anyway, it was a frustrating process as a voter, someone who's actually voting on
You're on
that
both sides
bond.
too, so.
Yeah, it was like, okay, can we get this thing built? You know, my daughter, who was 4 years younger than my son, she started at that school as a sophomore. She got to spend 3 years in the brand-new high school. So it took that long to get that high school built.
You had to stop your frustration?
Uh-huh.
Maybe more kids.
Oh, yeah, no, that didn't happen, believe me. So then the topic, of course, of impact fees comes up, right? Well, that's a state level decision. And so what we're gonna try to work on and get some understanding, maybe from Todd Lakey or from some other people, is how do the school districts get that ball rolling? How do they get a bill written? How do they initiate the process to at least get it on the floor? Like, no one's talking about it at the state level because no one knows how to get the ball rolling. So we're kind of hoping that we can help get that moving. But then, once that happens, then what? What? Uh-huh. Then we don't have to go out for bonds. With property tax revenue? Mm-hmm. Yeah, then you wouldn't have to. Your taxes would go down.
If they don't have to run bonds that do property taxes.
Then your taxes would go down.
Property taxes.
That,
When the housing slows down, where are they gonna get their funds?
They don't need them.
they won't need them at that point.
Slows down, they don't need the
People still have kids.
Right, but we don't have new rooftops, so you generally don't have a large.
They'll be cycling through the schools at a regular rate, and they'll already be good to go. Yeah. So,
Ron, you've got some thoughts on this, and if, I'll take it to the meeting if you want to express them.
Yes.
are you? If you would like to have that conversation with
Yeah.
him outside of the record, then that's something that,
What they need to do is get right back to what it used to be a number of years ago, where it wasn't your property taxes, the state paid for the schools.
we've never paid for schools.
State never paid for them?
They're supposed to.
The taxpayers have always paid for them,
Well, indirectly, but
through bonds.
2 bonds.
Comes out of our property taxes. Comes out of your property taxes.
something changed. I don't have any kids, so I've never had anybody go to school anywhere, so. But something changed about 5 or 6 years ago where the state used to have to pay for all this stuff themselves, and they passed it on to property taxes.
That was the sales tax thing.
That sales taxes?
Correct. So what you're thinking of, Steve, is a number of years ago, I think it's been longer than 5 ago, but at the state legislature made a change in the funding mechanism for schools. And that's when we went from a 5% sales tax to a 6% sales tax. And that 1% sales tax was supposed to relieve, to supplement funding that the state provided from elsewhere for schools. But my understanding is that that has not kept up with the need.
So your property taxes cost, you're paying more because of this change that they made 5 or 6 years ago.
Right, that's when we saw a lot of the more supplemental levies start coming in
Yeah.
and that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right church, wrong pew.
We have annual property tax revenue, a portion of that goes to the school, plus the supplemental levies that tack on.
So the supplemental levies, the construction bonds for the actual building the schools, what other portion of that goes to the school, I'm not
as I'm not familiar
I
enough
mean,
to
like,
tell
how
you
much-
exactly.
But-
And then there's and then there is some, obviously, state funding that goes to the schools as well.
Isn't there a
The
fund in-
portion of your property tax that goes to schools is set by those bonds, right?
That's
Correct.
what I believe, yes.
Yeah, but that's an annual revenue stream, right? So they should.
Only if we vote to continue those bonds.
Right, but a portion of the money collected from the revenue goes into some kind of a fund for new buildings and things. It doesn't all go for operations.
No, only the bonds that are specifically for capital school construction go to that. So they have their supplemental levies that go to operations, and then that's one type of bond, and then they have the capital bonds that go for building the schools. And so when they need to build a new school, they run a bond to build that school or number of schools that they're doing. It's not an ongoing thing, it's only as those bonds are approved that they get money for
Where does the lottery money come in?
it. You're getting beyond our scope of knowledge.
That goes to repair of existing buildings. It doesn't build any new buildings, doesn't pay teacher salaries. All it does is repair buildings that are already in existence.
Sure, that sounds good.
And it's not true. You look,
I believe you.
it's the truth.
I believe you.
So,
I always put a sign up in front saying your tax dollars at work, your lottery winnings at work or something.
so I guess, to me, it seems like we're choosing between impact fees or bonds, right? And so, aren't we saying we're gonna have the new people moving in help pay for this growth versus the people who already live here pay for the growth? I think it's a good idea. It might not be a one-to-one, we get all impact fees and now we get rid of all the bonds. It's gonna lessen the
But it
bond.
would reduce the bond needs.
I don't know.
It's fair for
Interesting to see
people
the
because everybody
numbers. I
pays
mean-
a proportion that way.
And I'm sure it's limited because it's only allowed to pay for the growth. So I assume it's only allowed to pay for new schools, not repairs, not teacher salaries,
Correct.
things like
You
that.
you cannot use it for operation and maintenance, and impact fee is only for capital construction.
So if you ran the number on a 10-year capital improvement plan for schools and do the math on new development,
They're
it's gonna be a big number, really big.
That will likely be a big number, yeah.
Spend, they spent $50 million on a high school, $60 million on a high school?
I think that should be something we bring up. Like they mentioned at the meeting, like we need 60 acres for a high school. And I'm like, do we? I mean, does every school need a football field
Yeah,
or
that's it. They need football.
They do, with turf.
why? I mean, but that's, I think that's to your point. We don't need to be spending so much on these new high schools. We need to get them a building and let them share with Valley View or Ridgeview and.
Homes.
And business, I
I
mean,
mean, what'd you say, 1,800 for Ridgecrest?
Ridgeview, yeah.
Yeah, capacity is
So-
1,800, and it'll probably exceed that.
I mean, even if you were at 2,000 pupils in that high school and you spent 50 million on it, if you divide that 50 million by 2,000 homes, that's gonna be a huge impact, huge.
And I would say you're likely dividing it by a much larger number than that,
Whole
because
district,
not
whole
every,
Valley View district.
you know, I just barely have a high school student. I have 5 kids. I'm gonna cycle through, yeah, I know. 2 sets of twins, 5 kids. It was a mistake. But, no, I'm just kidding.
On the record.
I know. My kids are never gonna
I'm
listen to
sending them
this. But just because, you know, you have, your kids cycle through and then you become an empty nester and so it's, well, but they're not in high school at that point. So you're gonna have you're not gonna have a one-to-one relationship with every house having one high schooler. You'll have some with a few at a time and then a lot with none and that. Right, that impact. that, and there's a lot of work that the school districts will have to go through to establish those capital improvement plans and what their new needs truly are. One of the things I think Christy and I talked about is, you know, a 10-year CIP may not be realistic with schools. It may need, you know, while we're amending the state rules, they may need longer to build up to those and build them. They may not need a high school every 10 years. They may need it only every 15 or 20 years, you know, just depends. And so that's work they would have to do to figure that out. Right.
Well, are we saying we have to get rid of the property tax and do the whole thing with, right?
If you don't, people are gonna.
Well, yeah, I think you have to at least lessen it,
And the voters are gonna be like, you're taxing us.
but it's not an all or nothing.
I know that that happened a few years ago, and then it went back to 5%, and now it's back up at 6. And I don't know what that 1%, if it's for the schools or if it's for something else. But I remember that conversation
Daniel.
years ago, but.
I mean,
You know, there may need to be some concessions made in the bill itself to say, okay, well, we're gonna take a little from here and a little from here to make this happen. I don't know.
in just about every meeting, we get comments from the public saying growth should pay for growth. And I think, isn't impact fees the way to do that?
Fire station.
Well, but again, that's new people moving in, so that's growth.
It's gonna have extra,
It's growth paying for growth.
so they can back it in there.
It's gonna totally raise it, they're gonna
Just a
pass it
two-lane
on
road
to
there.
the homeowner. But if we've got people moving in from wherever it is that they're moving in from,
You can't move them all into that second, third tier. Oh, you gotta have it.
Parking lot or driveway.
Take that away.
and price them out of it. They're already priced out of it. I'm not
Yeah,
sure
so they're gonna
it's
have
that
to,
problem.
they're gonna have to buy in Marcy there, then.
They have one of those lights that turns.
I imagine.
I'd
that
rather
we're gonna
not
see a
have it
changing
anyway,
market
but
before this
I live right
whole
behind there.
conversation Gets to the state level, but we need to come up with some options, because I don't know how to have this conversation with the public and with you guys if, like, when you ask me, it's an impact to the school, well, yeah, it's an impact to the school. It's also putting more rooftops on the ground that are gonna pay into those bonds.
Sure.
So that's more money for them too. So if you wanna look at it that way, then growth is good, because that's more people paying for those bonds, so
And more people moving in that might vote against those bonds because they're retired and
potentially,
Don't have kids like Steve.
don't have kids.
yeah,
Don't like children.
yeah, potentially.
Some of us don't even have children.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I think we've covered everything.
Can you strike my profanity out of the record, please?